In the dark annals of human history, few places evoke the same level of horror and revulsion as Auschwitz, the infamous Nazi concentration camp that operated from 1940 to 1945, located in southern Poland. Auschwitz was the largest of the Nazi camps and consisted of three main sites, Auschwitz-Birkenau and Auschwitz-Birkenau. It was at Auschwitz-Birkenau that the majority of the camp's estimated 1.1 million victims, most of them Jewish, were exterminated in gas chambers within its barbed wire fences. Unimaginable atrocities were committed, and one of the most chilling was the medical experiments conducted in Block 10. Block 10 was a special section of Auschwitz where Nazi doctors performed twisted experiments on helpless prisoners. The chief perpetrator was Dr. Karl Kloberg, who began his heinous work in April 1943. Clara's primary focus was on finding a cheap and efficient method of mass sterilization. He subjected hundreds of Jewish women to excruciating experiments injecting CTIC substances like formalin, phenol, and nitric acid into their uteruses and causing severe pain. Infections and often death. Kloberg experiments were particularly cruel because he often performed them without anesthesia, leaving his victims conscious and screaming in agony. In a letter to SS leader Heinrich Himmler dated June 7, 1943, Kloberg boasted, "The non-surgical method of sterilizing women that I have invented is now almost perfected. As for the questions that you have directed to me, sir, I can today answer them in the way that I had anticipated. If the research that I am carrying out continues to yield the sort of results that it has produced so far, and there is no reason to suppose that this shall not be the case, then I shall be able to report in the foreseeable future that one experienced physician with an appropriately equipped office and the aid of 10 auxiliary personnel will be able to carry out in the course of a single day the sterilization of hundreds or even 1,000 women." Another notorious figure in Block 10 was Dr. H. Schumann, who conducted brutal experiments involving castration and X-rays. He exposed prisoners' reproductive organs to high doses of radiation, causing severe burns, mutilation, and sterility. Many of his victims died agonizing deaths from the effects of radiation poisoning. Schumann's experiments were particularly focused on Roma gypsy prisoners, whom the Nazis considered asocials and targeted for extermination. In one infamous case, a Roma woman named Dina was subjected to radiation experiments that left her unable to walk. She was later killed in the gas chambers. These included high-altitude experiments using decompression chambers where prisoners were subjected to rapid changes in pressure to simulate conditions faced by ETA-V pilots. Freezing experiments conducted by Dr. Sigmund Rascher involved exposing prisoners to sub-zero temperatures to test the limits of human endurance. Additionally, tests of experimental drugs and chemicals such as sulfanilamide and phosphorus burns were inflicted upon prisoners' skin and internal organs. The screams of the tortured echoed through the halls of Block 10. Stanislawa Leszczynska, a Polish midwife imprisoned in Auschwitz, later recalled the cries of the women who were in terrible pain, and the moanings of the unconscious women accompanied me day and night. Linsa was forced to assist in the delivery of babies born to pregnant prisoners, many of whom were subjected to medical experiments. Despite the horrors she witnessed, Linsa remained committed to helping the women in her care, later saying, "Every child must be saved. That was my goal." Other experiments in Block 10 included testing the effects of various poisons and gases, purposefully infecting prisoners with diseases like typhus and malaria, and subjecting them to extreme temperatures and pressures. The Nazi doctors viewed their victims as nothing more than guinea pigs, expensing people in the pursuit of their twisted pseudoscience. One particularly cruel experiment involved subjecting prisoners to freezing temperatures and then attempting to revive them through various methods, such as immersing them in hot water. Many prisoners died as a result of these experiments, their bodies dumped in mass graves. One particularly disturbing experiment involved Dr. Josef Mengele, the infamous angel of death, who had a fascination with twins. He subjected pairs of twins to cruel and bizarre experiments, such as injecting dye into their eyes to try to change their color or sewing them together to create conjoined twins. Most of these children did not survive the ordeal. Mengele's fascination with genetics and his desire to improve the Aryan race drove his twisted experiments. In a 1985 Interview with the German magazine Bunter Mengele's son Rolf said of his father, "He was so obsessed with science, so convinced what he was doing was right. He believed he was doing great things for mankind in one particularly horrific case." Mengele personally killed 14 twins in one night by injecting chloroform into their hearts, earning him the moniker Toes Angel, the Angel of Death. The exact number of victims who suffered in Block 10 is unknown, but estimates range from several hundred to a few thousand. The majority were Jewish women, but the experiments also included Roma, Gypsy women, Polish political prisoners, and Soviet PS. Many of these women were young and healthy, chosen for their ability to withstand the torturous experiments. Others were selected because they had specific physical characteristics such as different colored eyes or unusual physical features. Despite the unimaginable pain and trauma inflicted upon them, some brave survivors of Block 10 lived to bear witness to the atrocities. Among them was Marie Claude Vonu, a French resistance fighter who testified at the Nuremberg trials. Her haunting words still resonate. "I saw the unseeable, that which human eyes should never behold." Another survivor was Vera Alexander, a Romanian Jewish woman who was subjected to sterilization experiments. In a 1994 interview with the USC Shower Foundation, Alexander recounted her experiences. "I was taken to Block 10, and there they gave me injections. After the injections, I became very sick. I had a very high fever, and I had tremendous pain in my abdomen. The pain was so great that I could unsleep at night as the Red Army approached." In January 1945, the Nazis attempted to cover up their crimes. They hastily killed many of the remaining prisoners and destroyed evidence of the experiments. When Soviet soldiers finally liberated the camp on January 27th, they found a scene of unimaginable horror with piles of corpses and emaciated survivors on the brink of death. One Soviet soldier, even Martin Oskin, later recalled, "We saw emaciated, tortured, impoverished people. Those were the people I first encountered. We could tell from their eyes that they were happy to be saved from this hell, happy that now they were threatened by death in a crematorium, happy to be freed, and we had the feeling of doing a good deed, liberating these people from this hell block." 11 echoes of agony in 8's execution yard. In the depths of human suffering, few places evoke the same visceral horror as Block 11, in a whit worse the notorious concentration camp that operated from 1942. Known as the Death Block, this foreboding structure bore witness to some of the most heinous atrocities committed during the Holocaust. Its walls, forever stained with the blood and tears of countless victims, Block 11 was a place of unimaginable terror where the screams of the condemned echoed through the cold, damp air. It was here that the Nazis meted out their twisted version of justice, subjecting prisoners to brutal interrogations, torture, and summary executions. The building, also known as Block 13 before the camp's numbering, the system was changed, had housed the Camp Gusto, the political department, and the prisoner cells in its cellar. The infamous inscription above the entrance, Arbit Mfrei, "Work sets you free," cried deceived the prisoners, for whom the only escape from Block 11 was often death. The cellar of Block 11 was a labyrinth of suffering consisting of 4 corridors lined with cells of various sizes. The largest cell, intended for mass detentions, measured 7.8 x 3.8 m and was known as Stay Bunker, standing cell, because it was designed to hold up to 120 inmates who were forced to stand all night in complete darkness due to lack of space. The smaller cells, measuring 1.5 x 1.5 m, were used for solitary confinement, and torture prisoners were crammed into these cells, often without clothing and deprived of food and water for days on end. Many died from suffocation, while others were driven to insanity by the relentless torture and isolation. One of the most infamous rooms in Block 11 was Cell 22, the starvation cell. Here prisoners were condemned to a slow and agonizing death, deprived of food and water, until their bodies wasted away. In September 1941, a group of Soviet prisoners of war, including men named Dubinin, Gavi, Nikiforov, and Esiov, were locked in this cell and left to die when the cell was opened. Weeks later, only 4 of the original 74 men were found alive, surrounded by the corpses of their comrades. The starvation bunker was a favored punishment for prisoners caught attempting to escape or those accused of sabotage or resistance activities. The courtyard adjacent to Block 11 served as The execution site where thousands of prisoners were shot against the death wall by SS guards. The first executions took place on November 11, 1941. When 151 prisoners were shot, among them was a Polish priest named Father Maximilian Kolb, who had volunteered to take the place of another prisoner condemned to death. Call S. Selfless. Act of sacrifice echoed through the camp, a glimmer of humanity amidst the darkness, his final words spoken to his fellow. Prisoners where hate is not creative, love alone is creative. Kola was later canonized by the Catholic Church, becoming a symbol of martyrdom and selflessness in the face of evil. Stanis Laga, a Polish prisoner who survived AIDS, recounted the harrowing sights and sounds of Block 11 in his memoir, 5 Years in Auschwitz. From the cells of Block 11 came the terrible, heart-rending screams and moans of the tortured, intermingled with the bestial bellowing of the torturers. It was a veritable hell on earth, a hell that could be seen through the small barred windows of the cells. Gruck himself spent time in Block 11 enduring beatings and torture at the hands of the SS guards. He described one particularly brutal guard named Guard Palak, who was known for his sadistic treatment of prisoners. He had a face like a bulldog, and he was always smiling, but it was a smile that made your blood run cold. When he smiled, you knew that something terrible was about to happen. Music. The walls of Block 11 bore witness to the unspeakable cruelty inflicted upon the prisoners. Josef Kret, another survivor, described the sadistic methods employed by the SS. They would beat us with rifle butts, kick us, and set dogs on us. They would hang us by our arms, which they had tied behind our backs. They would pour cold water over us and leave us hanging like that for hours. Kret endured multiple interrogations in Block 11, his body broken but his spirit undefeated. He later recalled, "I knew that I had to survive, that I had to bear witness to what had happened here. That thought kept me going through the darkest hours." Block 11 also played a central role in the campus resistance activities. In September 1944, a group of Sund commando prisoners who were forced to work in the gas chambers in crematoria staged a revolt. They managed to blow up crematorium for war, using explosives smuggled into the camp by female prisoners who worked in a nearby munitions factory. The SS brutally crushed the uprising, executing 4 or 5 Sud commando prisoners in the courtyard of Block 11. As a warning to others, among those executed was Zalman Gradowski, a Polish Jew